Hello, friends. So I thought I would just quickly throw together something. As you may have heard, Prime Minister Trudeau this morning announced that he will resign as Prime Minister of Canada, although it might be a while before he actually leaves office and lets someone new take charge.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Prime Minister Trudeau has been under a lot of fire recently from members of his own party who have become increasingly convinced that he can not win a fourth term. Calls for him to step down from other members of his Liberal Party had been getting louder and louder over the last few months, and today he finally conceded that. He said pretty explicitly that he feels like as long as these internal battles are defining his party, he doesn't have confidence that he is the right man to lead his party into the next scheduled election.
And it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
The next Canadian election is scheduled for October of 2025, but the exact date now seems quite ambiguous. So basically, to summarize it very shortly, Prime Minister Trudeau says that he will resign as Prime Minister and allow someone else to become Prime Minister and allow someone else to lead his party into the next election as soon as his party has selected someone else for that job. The race to be the next head of the Liberal Party of Canada and thus the next Liberal Prime Minister and candidate for Prime Minister in the 2025 election will be a process that will take some number of months to sort out. And it is for that reason that Prime Minister Trudeau made another announcement today, which is that he is going to suspend or prorogue the Parliament until the end of March.
And the House will now be prorogued until March 24th.
This means that the Parliament of Canada will not be sitting until March 24th, which basically creates a convenient window of opportunity for the party to select a new Prime Minister. But this is also significant in that it means that the Parliament cannot vote no confidence in Trudeau, which had previously been the looming threat. The Parliament had previously been scheduled to reconvene at the end of January, which would have put Trudeau in theory at immediate risk for a non-confidence vote and an emergency election that he would then have to fight. But now there will be no threat of a non-confidence vote and emergency election until the end of March, presuming that the Conservatives and the NDP and the Bloc Québécois all agree to vote no confidence then, which, you know, they probably will. What makes this a kind of strange moment for Canadian political history, however, is that if this kind of schedule unfolds as we're expecting it to, this person who replaces Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister and Liberal candidate for Prime Minister in the next election will only be in office as incumbent Prime Minister for maybe, a couple of weeks. This new Prime Minister will then lead the party in the ensuing election, which, could be in early April if the non-confidence vote happens in late March. And then that person, if the polls are to be believed, will almost certainly lose in a big landslide election to the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre, who will then become the next Prime Minister. Depending on how long the Canadian election campaign lasts for, which is a kind of variable, Pierre Poilievre could become Prime Minister, I guess, in like mid-May or something. So in other words, we would basically have a year of 3 Prime Ministers in this country. We would have Trudeau serving until the end of March. Then we would have some new Prime Minister serving from April to mid-May or something. And then we would have Pierre Poilievre as the new Conservative Prime Minister from May onward. That's kind of the rough approximation of what we're sort of settling in for. So the immediate criticism is that this is a big stunt, that, Prime Minister Trudeau is kind of playing games with the political system, with the prime ministership, merely to kind of save his own party from, likely certain doom. His party is presumably still facing certain doom, but, I guess Trudeau can rest easy knowing he won't be the face associated with it. Some other prime minister will be the fall guy, or I think more likely, fall gal. The best case scenario, I guess, is that this new prime minister somehow, wins the hearts of the Canadian people in a way that Trudeau has been unable to recently. And this new prime minister sort of boosts the fortunes of the Liberal Party and that she becomes a very strong opponent to Pierre Poilievre and, I guess, pulls off a surprise upset victory at the very last moment. This is obviously a big stretch, but this is really the only sort of justification that you can use to, defend a process like this. So yeah, it looks like Canada is likely to have a year of 3 prime ministers. I personally think this will bring a great deal of instability to the Canadian government at a time when we're, facing looming threats of tariffs from Donald Trump and all sorts of other challenges. But the Canadian political system is set up in such a way that it is very easy for the interests of the country to be rendered subordinate to the interests of the political parties who run it. I'm now going to get to work on writing a more thorough script about this whole situation for my regularly scheduled video this weekend. But let me know in the comments below what your immediate thoughts are on this dramatic day in Canadian history.